Yeah, well, I never, my mom went to Juilliard, and I never had in my mind to go to Juilliard. I'd studied piano first, then switched over to cello when I was about 7. Played mostly chamber and solo classical music. Got really involved in rock music when I was a teenager, wired up my cello, and when I was done with high school, I knew that music was really important to me, and I knew I didn't want to be a cellist, but I wasn't really sure, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a composer or think about me. I was just interested in the ideas behind music. I was interested in mathematics. And and the last thing I thought about was going to Juilliard. I also, had grown up and gone to high school in New York, so I wanted to get out of the East Coast. I went to University of Santa Cruz, University of California at Santa Cruz for a year, which turned out to be a really vibrant, a very intensive intellectual atmosphere where you could do a lot of aspects of music without it being a conservatory. And that's why I went there. You could study, there was a very good guy doing computer music. There was a performing ensemble that did a lot of John Cage and European avant-garde composers. There was a guy who had been at University of Chicago who kind of retired to Santa Cruz, who was one of the great music historians, music theorists, and I used to go to his house. I got him to tutor me on Beethoven piano sonatas, so there was nobody giving a course, and it was a wonderful place. But I had a lot more music training than most people there, so after a year I thought, gee, I don't really need college anymore, which wasn't correct, but that's what I thought. And I definitely, within a month or so of getting to Santa Cruz, I realized that composing was what I wanted to do, that my mind loved to put things together, and it combined all the different things I really loved. And I started getting even more interested in technology than I was in high school. So I moved to Italy for a year because one of my former cello teachers was playing in the orchestra in Florence. So that was really nice. I moved there, played in the orchestra for a year, studied with a very famous Italian composer named Luigi Dalla Piccola. And then, quickly at the end of that year, I knew that I probably should study something. I probably wasn't done with, I didn't know anything, but probably should go back and study composition. I knew I was a composer. And Pierre Boulez, who at that point was conductor of the New York Philharmonic, great conductor and composer, who's kind of my hero, came to Florence with the BBC Symphony. And I chased him down the block after the concert, and I think he thought I was going to mug him or something. And finally turned around. I said, I'm a young composer. I'd love to show you my music. Could we talk? So he invited me the next day to rehearsal, and we talked and showed him what I was doing. He was very, very nice. And I said, would you teach me? And he said, I just don't teach. I never have. I don't teach composing. I don't teach conducting. I just don't do that. I'm happy to stay in touch and follow what you're doing, but I can't teach. So I said, well, where's the best place to go? And he said, the only place the only good thing right now is to go to Juilliard and study with Elliott Carter. So that's what I did. But except it was like the end of the summer, and it was. But I went back. I convinced them to let me take the exam, and got in for that September. So I did start at Juilliard. I was kind of halfway through my bachelor's. I stayed there for my bachelor's, my master's, and started my doctorate, first year of the doctorate. And then the same Pierre Boulez had in between been invited back to France. The Pompidou Center opened up, and they started this big music technology institute. And Boulez invited me to go there, so I went for a year, stayed for 7, and never went back. But Juilliard, is this going to be on the air? No, I got to. It's funny. Music is, I guess it's true with a lot of disciplines, but, just to get the skill you need to practice the art, to get your way around an instrument, to be able to imagine complex music in your mind so that you can think about it, shape it, write it down, be able to, if you're a composer, hear your music played and be able to immediately have judgment about whether it's the way you want it or not, and then articulate. I mean, many, many skills that are not really intellectual skills. They're more like I mean, you have to train your mind and your ears, but they're almost more athletic skills than so. Part of music, you just have to learn those things, or you can't practice the art. On the other hand, one of my interests in music has always been what it means, why it affects us the way it does. What one of the big mysteries of music is you take music without words. It means something to us because we know it's about something. It's about something important humanly, but since there are no words, nobody knows what it's about. Is it about a person? Is it about that person? Is it about some kind of story that you could put into words? So there's just an incredibly rich and interesting relationship between our listening to music and the way our minds engage. I mention that because you can't do any of that at Juilliard. So a place like Juilliard is terrific for, I got to study with Elliott Carter. So this amazing, probably the greatest living composer in my view right now. But he was never a pedagogue. I mean, I was one of his very few students. And the lessons, I studied with him for like 6 years. And I'd go into a lesson, there's a piano there. But as I remember it, for 6 years, we never actually lifted the lid of the piano. So the piano lid was closed, put the music on the piano. And as I remember it, every lesson we'd stand up. I don't know why. We'd never sit at the piano. And we'd look at the music and start talking about it. And, you would never kind of plunk out your piece. And, this is what, here's how it sounds. You'd never come in with a cassette or a CD. The understanding was that you imagined it in your head and you could look at it and talk about it, and both of you were hearing it as if there were a CD playing, but it was totally silent. And he would just, it's almost as if he was looking at his music. He'd look at it and say, oh, gee, okay, I see where it's going here. But it makes that sound here, but you could do it this way, or you could do it that way. And if you did it like that, it would keep somebody interested for over here, or this feels too obvious that you might do. And so it was completely unpedagogical, because he wasn't telling me a principle. He wasn't telling me a theory. He wasn't saying, here's a way to think about it. He was just thinking about it out loud as if it were his music, pretty much. And so I had to kind of learn how to ask him questions, especially about harmony and texture. So it was a very unusual pedagogical experience. It was a wonderful way to train listening ability, inner listening, but most of the other courses were not so interesting, and it was not a very intellectual environment. So I took a lot of courses. I signed up for the general studies at Columbia while I was there. I think now Juilliard and Columbia actually have some reciprocal programs, but then it was like just doing another, just in my spare time. So that's where I took music theory and actually computer science, and I studied German, all these things that I wanted to learn. I took some mathematics there. So it was kind of like 2 degrees. And Juilliard is, the great thing about it is that there's an incredible, really high level of talent. I mean, a lot of people there who are just very good at what they do and have been doing it for a long time. A lot of people there had decided way younger than I did that they wanted to be musicians. I think part of the bad thing is that skill is emphasized so much that a lot of people, by the time they get to Juilliard, I think they kind of forget why they got into music in the first place. And, if they're performers, this is a simplification, but a lot of them are trying to win a competition and play more accurately or better or more beautifully, whatever can be measured, than somebody else. And, even for composers, it's to kind of win a prize or make a mark. It's not really, what do I really care about? And what's, the only reason anybody would ever want to be a composer is because there's something so burning inside you that you need to express and think about and figure out. I mean, it's such an impractical profession that, in general, composers are very sympathetic because they're dealing with real issues, and most of the practical things in life are kind of difficult. But at Juilliard, it tended to be almost like a business school. So I learned a lot there, and I still have some friends there, but it wasn't my favorite environment.